The mountain terrain is unforgiving at 10,000 feet. Thin air burns lungs with every breath. Loose shale turns ankles without warning. And the Hindu Kush doesn't care about your rank, your training, or how badly you want to survive. Specialist Kira Brennan is 4 miles into an impossible carry. Her back is screaming. Something tore 20 minutes ago, a muscle or ligament giving way under sustained load that the human body was never designed to bear. Each step sends fire up her spine. Her legs are shaking, locked in cramps that won't release. The man on her back weighs 220 pounds with gear. She weighs 120, soaking wet. Petty Officer First Class Dalton Cross is bleeding out from shrapnel wounds across his left side. He's 6'3" of wounded Navy SEAL drifting in and out of consciousness, trying to understand how someone half his size is carrying him through terrain that would break most men without any load at all. Behind them, shot in, enemy voices echo off the rocks. Coordination in Pashto, methodical search patterns, getting closer. Kira adjusts her grip, ignores the fresh wave of pain from her back, and keeps moving. One step, then another, because stopping isn't an option she's willing to accept. Dalton's voice comes out weak, confused by blood loss and pain. This is impossible. Physics, you can't. Kira's response comes through gritted teeth, each word timed with a step. Watch me. Prove physics wrong. But before we show you how she did the impossible, you need to know who they underestimated. Because what happened on that mountain didn't start with an ambush. It started 14 years earlier in a different set of mountains with a different kind of test. Montana, October 1998. The Rockies in early winter. Snow dusting the high peaks, air crisp enough to make breathing hurt. Kira Brennan is 14 years old, following her father through timber that thins out at 7,500 feet. Connor Brennan moves like a man who knows mountains because mountains are where he learned to be a soldier. Army Ranger, Gulf War veteran. The kind of quiet professional who doesn't talk about what he did in desert combat, just carries those lessons into everything that comes after. He's teaching his daughter to hunt. Not sport hunting, survival hunting. The kind where you eat what you kill, and if you can't carry it out, you don't deserve to pull the trigger. They've been tracking this bull elk for 3 days. Early morning movements, feeding patterns, bedding areas. Connor teaching patience, observation. The kind of field craft that separates people who talk about hunting from people who fill their freezers. The shot comes at dawn, 200 yards across a canyon. Kira's rifle, Connor's guidance. The bull drops clean, no suffering. Respect for the animal, the respect for the taking of life. 400 pounds of meat and bone lying in a canyon 6 miles from camp. No roads, no ATVs, no easy way out. Connor Field dresses the animal with practiced efficiency, teaching anatomy with his knife. Shows Kira where to cut, how to separate quarters, how to wrap meat to keep it clean. When he's done, there are 4 quarters each, close to 100 pounds. Plus backstraps, tenderloins, smaller cuts. Kira looks at the meat, then at the terrain they'll have to cross. 6 miles of steep mountain country. Her father is watching her, reading the calculation in her eyes. We'll make 2 trips, she says. Carry half today, cash, the rest come back tomorrow. Connor shakes his head. 1 trip? Dad, there's 400 pounds here. We can't. You killed it, you carry it. That's the rule. Kira stares at her father, understanding this isn't about the elk anymore. This is a test. The kind of test that Rangers give where the mission isn't just possible, it's designed to push you past where you think you can go. Connor hands her a pack frame. You'll take the hind quarter, 100 pounds, maybe more. I'll take the rest. I can't carry 100 pounds 6 miles. Can't is a decision. Your body doesn't make decisions. Your mind does. Rangers learn that at Benning, learn it again in every operation that matters. Pain is information, not orders. Your body tells you what's happening. You decide what to do about it. Kira looks at the quarter, then at the mountain, then at her father. Sees something in his expression that makes her understand this moment matters, not just for hunting, for everything that comes after. She helps him load the quarter onto her pack frame. The weight settles across her shoulders like a physical blow. Her knees buckle slightly before she locks them. Connor is watching without helping, letting her figure out the mechanics. How to position the load. How to use her hips, her core, her skeletal structure, instead of just muscle strength. When she starts walking, every step is agony. The weight presses down through shoulders that aren't developed enough for this. Her legs burn after 50 meters. After 200, she's convinced she can't make it to 500. After 500, 6 miles seems mathematically impossible. But Connor walks beside her, not helping, not carrying her load, just present. And every time she thinks about stopping, about asking him to take the weight, she remembers what he said. Pain is information, not orders. Her shoulders are screaming information about stress and strain. Her legs are sending urgent messages about lactic acid and muscle fiber recruitment. Her back is providing detailed reports about load distribution and spinal compression. All of it is information. None of it is orders. She keeps walking. One step, then another, then another. Not thinking about 6 miles, just thinking about the next step. Then the step after that, building a rhythm, finding a pace that her body can maintain even when her mind says it can't. They reach camp after dark. 6 hours of sustained carryover terrain that has no mercy for mistakes. Kira drops the pack frame and collapses. Can't stand, can't move. Just lies there ever, muscle shaking, body in complete rebellion against what she just forced it to do. Connor kneels beside her, and for the first time all day, there's approval in his voice. You know what you just learned? Kira can barely form words. That I can carry 100 pounds 6 miles. No, you learned that the limit you think you have isn't real. Your body has capacity you don't know about until you need it. Today you needed it. You found it. That's the lesson Rangers learn. That's what kept me alive in the Gulf. Knowing that when everything says quit, you can still take one more step. He helps her sit up, hands her water. Remember this feeling. Remember that you did something you thought was impossible. Because someday someone will tell you that you can't do something. They'll have good reasons. Physics, biology, common sense. You'll look at the math and agree it's impossible. And then you'll do it anyway because you'll remember carrying that elk out of these mountains when you were 14 years old. Kira drinks the water and looks at her father. Doesn't fully understand yet, but the lesson is planted, settling into muscle memory, into the deep wiring that will matter years later when the stakes are higher than meat and pride. That was 14 years ago. The lesson stayed. Forward to 2006. Kira is 18, standing in a recruiting office in Billings, Montana. High school is done. College is possible, but doesn't feel right. The mountains taught her something about herself, about capacity and will, and what happens when you refuse to quit. She wants to test that in a bigger arena. The recruiter asks what job she wants. Kira looks at the list of military occupational specialties and picks 13B, Field Artillery Cannoneer. The recruiter, a sergeant who's seen a lot of female recruits pick combat support jobs, asks if she's sure. It's heavy work, humping rounds all day in the heat. Physical standards are high. Kira thinks about 100-pound elk quarters in 6 miles of mountain terrain. I can carry heavy things a long way. What else matters? Basic training at Fort Sill is exactly what her father prepared her for. Physical challenges that are designed to break people who don't have the right internal wiring. Kira doesn't break. She's not the biggest, not the strongest, but she's discovered something the drill sergeants recognize. She doesn't quit. Ever. When other recruits are looking for ways out of the pain, Kira is pushing into them, testing her limits, finding that same place she found on the mountain at 14. Advanced individual training teaches her the M777 howitzer. 155 millimeter rounds, 95 pounds each. Loading them in 100-degree heat, sustained fire missions, the kind of physical punishment that weeds out people who don't have real commitment. Kira thrives, not because she's naturally gifted, but because she's already learned the lesson. Pain is information, the heat is information, the weight is information. None of it gives orders. Deployment comes in 2007. Iraq, the surge period when artillery units are working around the clock providing fire support. Kira spends 13 months humping 95-pound rounds, sometimes 40 rounds, in a fire mission, hundreds of tons of high explosive across a deployment where every day is physical punishment. She's good at her job, respected by her team. The men she works with stop seeing gender after the first month, start seeing competence. She can carry her load. She doesn't complain. She doesn't quit. In artillery, that's what matters. But bodies have limits even when minds refuse to acknowledge them. By month 11, Kira's back is sending messages that aren't just information anymore. Stress fractures in her lower spine, muscle damage from sustained heavy lifting, the kind of injury that happens when you push past capacity for too long. Medical evacuation to Germany, surgery, recovery. The doctors tell her she can stay in, but not in field artillery. The sustained heavy lifting will cause permanent damage. She needs to retrain into something that won't destroy her spine before she's 30. Sitting in a hospital bed in Landstuhl, Kira has to make a choice. Medical discharge, go home, tell everyone she tried. Or adapt to find a different way to prove that injury doesn't mean finished. She looks at the retraining options. Most female soldiers with her injury profile would pick human resources or logistics, something administrative where the physical demands are minimal. Kira looks at 35P, cryptologic linguist. Its intelligence work, still operational, still matters in combat. The pipeline includes Pashto language training, Afghanistan missions, a way to stay in the fight even if the fight looks different. She chooses 35P and spends the next 18 months learning to speak Pashto fluently, to understand signals intelligence, to be an operator in a different way. Not carrying rounds anymore. Carrying information. Still critical, still combat relevant, just different physics. By 2010, she's qualified and deploying as a signals intelligence specialist. First attachment to a special operations unit happens in Kandahar. She's nervous, expecting the same respect she earned in artillery. Instead, she gets professional tolerance, barely hiding doubt. The operators see her size, see her gender, see support staff instead of soldier. She doesn't argue, doesn't defend herself, just does her job, monitors enemy communications, provides real-time translation, maps enemy positions from radio signatures, proves through competence, not words. It happens the same way on the second attachment, and the third, and the fourth. Each time the same pattern. Initial dismissal based on size and gender. Quiet competence changing opinions over time, but never fast enough to avoid the comments, the doubt, the assumption that she's a liability waiting to happen. By March 2012, Kira is on her 5th Special Operations Attachment, FOB Lightning, Afghanistan, preparing for a SEAL reconnaissance mission. She's learned to expect the reception. Professional courtesy masking the calculation behind an operator's eyes. The unspoken question, will she slow us down if things go bad? Chief Petty Officer Cole Madsen runs the pre-mission brief. He's 48 old for a SEAL, but the kind of combat experience that earns respect keeps him in operational roles. Desert Storms scroll on his uniform. Multiple combat deployments since. The weathered face of someone who's seen enough to know what matters and what doesn't. The briefing room is standard military sparse. Maps on the wall showing the Hindu Kush terrain. Satellite imagery of valleys and ridgelines. The mission is reconnaissance, 72 hours in the mountains, tracking enemy supply routes near the Pakistan border. Madsen's voice carries the authority of 2 decades doing this job. We insert at dusk, establish observation post on ridgeline with sight lines into the valley. Standard rotation for security. Mission timeline is 3 days unless we get actionable intelligence that requires extension. He looks at Kira and his tone shifts slightly. Not hostile, just clear about boundaries. Brennan, your role is communications intercept. You stay at the OP, you monitor enemy nets. You provide real-time translation when relevant. You do not slow us down if we need to move fast. Clear, Chief. The other SEALs are watching this interaction with professional detachment. Except one. Petty Officer First Class Dalton Cross is 32, 8 years in the teams, and the kind of confidence that tips over into arrogance. He's big 6'3", 220 pounds of operator who spent those 8 years being the most physically capable person in most rooms. He leans back in his chair, voice just loud enough. Must be nice. Sit with headphones while we do the real work. It's not quite to Kira, not quite about her, but definitely meant to be heard. The other SEALs don't respond, but they don't shut him down either. Professional tolerance of the attitude, if not the words. Kira says nothing, just checks her gear list, makes notes about frequencies, to monitor acts like she didn't hear. Because engaging just makes it worse. Better to let them think what they want, prove through action when it matters. After the brief, Madsen pulls Kira aside. His voice is quieter, less formal. Don't mind Cross. He lost teammates in Ramadi back in '06. Kid froze up during contact, got the team ambushed. Cross took it hard. He projects that onto anyone he didn't train with, especially support personnel. Understood, Chief. But that doesn't mean you get slack. This is a SEAL operation. Standards are high. You keep up, you do your job, we'll be professional. You slow us down or make mistakes, it's not personal, but we won't work with you again. Kira meets his eyes, sees the test there. I'll keep up. Madsen nods and walks away. Kira goes back to her gear prep, checks her ANPRC 148 MBITR radio, tests the ANC 142 crypto fill, inventories the laptop for signals analysis, inspects her M4 carbine, the one they authorize her to carry for self-defense, even though the implication is clear. She's not expected to fight. She's expected to sit safe and monitor radios while the real operators do dangerous work. What they don't know, what her personnel file doesn't advertise, is that she spent 2 years humping 95-pound artillery rounds in Iraqi heat, that she grew up carrying 100-pound loads through Montana mountains. That pain is just information to her, not orders, and when the mission requires something impossible, she's already proven to herself that impossible is just a word. But she doesn't tell them any of this. Words are cheap. Montana taught her that. You don't talk about what you can do, you just do it when it matters. She loads her magazines 30 rounds each, 4 spares, packs her gear with the efficiency of someone who's done this before, and tries not to think about the fact and that they see 120 pounds with headphones, not a soldier who's earned her place through every deployment, every mission, every time she refused to quit when quitting, made sense. The insertion helicopter lifts off at dusk. The flight is loud, the kind of noise that makes conversation impossible, so everyone sits with their own thoughts. Kira watches the terrain pass below. Mountains rising into the thin air, valleys cutting deep between ridgelines, the kind of country that breaks people who don't respect it. She's been here before. Different valleys, different missions, but the same fundamental challenge. Operate in terrain that offers no mercy against an enemy that knows this ground better than any American ever will, with teammates who are measuring whether she belongs. The bird drops them on a ridgeline at 10,000 feet. The air is immediately different, thin enough that breathing takes conscious effort. They move through darkness with practiced efficiency. Night vision, turning the world into green-tinted shapes. Each step, deliberate, noise, discipline, absolute. Kira keeps pace. Her smaller frame is actually an advantage here. Low-profile, efficient movement through tight terrain where bulk becomes liability. She's not trying to prove anything, just moving like her father taught her in Montana mountains. Use the terrain. Don't fight physics. Find the path that works. The SEALs notice, not commenting but registering that she's not struggling, that she understands mountain movement, understands how to place feet on loose shale without creating noise, understands that speed matters less than efficiency. They establish the observation post in a cluster of rocks that provides good cover and excellent sight lines into the valley below. 2 SEALs on security rotation. Kira setting up her signals intelligence station. Directional antenna aimed at the valley. Laptop powered up and running analysis software. Headphones on, starting to scan enemy frequencies. This is her job. Not glamorous. Not the door-kicking direct action that defines SEAL operations, but critical. Enemy communications tell you where they are, what they're planning when they're vulnerable. In counterinsurgency warfare, information matters more than firepower. Kira knows this. The SEALs know it too, even if they don't say it. Day 1 is routine. Security rotations, surveillance of the valley, Kira monitoring radio traffic logging transmissions, building a pattern analysis. She catches fragments of conversation that suggest enemy activity in the area, but nothing immediately threatening. Small unit coordination, local commanders checking in, standard stuff. Dalton is on security rotation near her position. His attitude hasn't improved. He makes comments to the other SEAL on shift quiet enough to maintain deniability, loud enough for Kira to hear. Wonder what she'd do if actual shooting started. Probably freeze up like most pogs. Pugai. Person other than grunt. It's not the worst thing Kira has been called in 10 years wearing the uniform, but it stings because it reduces everything she's done to a label. She's not a soldier. She's support staff. Tolerated, not respected. She doesn't respond. Just keeps working. Her frequencies, keeps building her intelligence picture, keeps proving through quiet competence that she knows her job. Day 2. The pattern continues. Professional routine. SEALs doing their surveillance. Kira monitoring communications. She's good at this work, good enough that she starts identifying individual enemy call signs, mapping probable positions based on radio triangulation, building a picture that's more complete than anyone expected from 3 days of intercepts. Madsen acknowledges it during a situation report. Good work, Brennan. Intel picture is solid. Keep it up. It's not much, but it's recognition. Dalton stays silent, but Kira sees him processing, sees the calculation changing even if the attitude hasn't. But something is bothering her. The enemy radio traffic is increasing. Not dramatically, but the pattern is changing. More coordination, more unit call signs checking in, movement reports, timing discussions. The kind of chatter that suggests something building. She reports it each time. Chief traffic is elevated, multiple units coordinating. Madsen takes it seriously. Any specifics about our position? Negative, but the pattern feels wrong. Noted, stay on it. Night 2, Kira catches a fragment that makes her stomach drop. It's partial garbled by terrain, but clear enough. American patrol? Prepared positions? Wait for signal. She reports immediately. Chief, I just intercepted something. Partial transmission. Mentioned American patrol and prepared positions. Could be compromised. Madsen considers this. SEALs are trained to take intelligence seriously, but also to weigh probability against paranoia. A partial intercept could mean anything. Could be old information. Could be about a different unit. Could be nothing. Can you confirm? Negative. It was partial, but it felt specific. Madsen makes the command decision. Not enough to abort. We stay sharp, stay ready to move if the situation changes. But we continue mission. Kira nods, but the unease stays with her. She keeps monitoring, keeps hoping she's wrong, keeps hearing that fragment in her head. American patrol, prepared positions. Morning of day 3. Madsen takes 4 SEALs, including Dalton, on a close reconnaissance patrol. There's a trail junction in the valley. Intelligence suggests enemy supplies are moving through. They need eyes on need to confirm need ground, truth to match the signal's intelligence. It's supposed to be routine. Movement to observation point, surveillance, movement back. Standard stuff that SEAL reconnaissance teams do constantly. Kira stays at the OP with Petty Officer Reese Hayes and 1 other SEAL providing security. Her job is to continue monitoring to provide overwatch via communications intercept to warn them if enemy radio traffic suggests the patrol is detected. She's scanning frequencies when the traffic spikes. Not gradually, suddenly. Multiple call signs, all coordinating, all urgent. Her Pashto is fluent enough to catch the implications immediately. Now, American patrol near trail. Positions ready. Finish them. She keys the radio. Chief, enemy traffic just spiked. Multiple units. They knew you were coming. This is planned. Madsen's voice comes back tense. Copy, eyes open, out. 30 seconds later, the world explodes. The IED is command detonated, triggered by an observer who's been tracking the patrol. The blast tears through the SEAL element with devastating precision. 2 men killed instantly, bodies torn apart by the shaped charge designed to defeat body armor. 3 others wounded, including Dalton. The ambush that follows is textbook. Automatic weapons fire from 3 positions, creating interlocking fields of fire that turn the kill zone into a death trap. RPGs fired to prevent maneuver to pin the survivors to finish what the IED started. At the OP, Kira hears the explosion, hears the immediate eruption of gunfire, hears Madsen's voice cutting through the chaos trying to coordinate a defense that's already falling apart. Hayes is immediately on the radio calling for fire support, for air support, for anything that can help. But Kira is looking through her binoculars and she can see the tactical picture developing. One figure separated from the others, dragging himself behind a boulder. Clearly wounded, clearly unable to move. Enemy fighters are maneuvering to flank the main SEAL position. Their route will take them directly past that isolated figure. She knows who it is before she confirms. The size, the gear, the position. Dalton Cross, the man who spent 3 days dismissing her as a liability. now lying wounded in a position that will be overrun in the next 5 minutes. Hayes is focused on coordinating air support. The tactical situation requires someone managing the radios, getting assets moving, providing command with the information they need to send help. That's his job. That's what training and doctrine say matters most. But Kira is watching Dalton try to drag himself to better cover, watching enemy fighters close the distance, watching math that says he has maybe 5 minutes before they reach him. Fire support will take 10 minutes minimum. Air support maybe 15. Dalton doesn't have that long. She makes a decision that's either going to save 2 lives or end them both. I'm going after him. Hayes grabs her arm. Brennan, that's not your job. Your signal's intelligence. Stay here and work the comms. Someone has to get him before they do. That's not your call to make. Kira pulls her arm free, checks her M4 carbine. 30 rounds in the magazine, 4 spare mags on her vest. Not a lot for what she's about to do, but enough to try. You need to coordinate air support. That's your job. Mine is getting crossed before the enemy does. She's moving before Hayes can argue further. Down the slope, using every piece of terrain for cover, moving fast but not reckless. Her father's voice in her head. Rangers don't rush into kill zones. They use terrain, use concealment, use speed when it's safe, and patience when it's not. She covers 300 meters in 4 minutes. Can see Dalton now behind his boulder, conscious but fading. Blood spreading across his left side. Shrapnel from the IED armor plate stopped the worst of it, but fragments found gaps. Ribs and shoulder torn up. He's trying to apply pressure to wounds he can barely reach. Enemy fighters are 60 meters away and closing. 4 of them that Kira can see. AK-47s moving with practiced coordination. Not amateurs, veterans of 15 years fighting Americans, knowing terrain and tactics. Kira slides into cover next to Dalton. His eyes are struggling to focus, pain and blood loss making everything hazy. Recognition comes slowly. Brennan, what the hell are you doing here? Saving your ass cross. Can you walk? Can barely move. Left side is shredded. Automatic weapons fire cracks overhead. Enemy fighters have spotted movement firing at their position. Rounds impact rock, spray fragments, the kind of fire that says they're close and getting closer. Kira risks a glance over the rocks. Counts 4 fighters now 50 meters out, moving tactically using cover. They're professionals. They know wounded Americans can't go far. They're going to overrun this position and finish the job. She checks Dalton's wounds, bad but not immediately fatal. If she can get him out, if she can get him to the helicopter, he'll live. But that's 8 miles of mountain terrain with enemy in pursuit and a man who weighs twice what she does. The math says it's impossible. Physics says 120 pounds can't carry 220 pounds 8 miles through mountains while taking enemy fire. Biology says her back is already damaged, that sustained load bearing will cause permanent injury. But Montana taught her something about impossible. And her father's voice is in her head, clear as the day she carried that elk quarter home. Pain is information, not orders. Your body tells you what's happening. You decide what to do about it. Kira makes her decision. She's going to carry Dalton Cross 8 miles through hell, through terrain that breaks strong men through enemy territory, where being caught means death. She's going to do it because leaving him here isn't something she can live with. But first, she has to deal with 4 enemy fighters who are 40 meters away and closing fast. She checks her M4. Full magazine, 4 spares, 150 rounds total. She's going to need every one. Cross, when I start shooting, we move. I need you to use everything you have left. Legs, good, arm, whatever works. I'll help, but you have to move with me. Dalton tries to focus on her. This 120-pound signals specialist who wasn't supposed to leave the OP, who spent 3 days listening to him dismiss her capabilities, now crouched beside him with a rifle and a look in her eyes that he recognizes. The same look he's seen in teammates before dangerous operations. Determination backed by capability, the real thing. You can't carry me out of here. Watch me. Kira rises from cover. The M4 comes to her shoulder with practiced efficiency. 2 years of field artillery, 4 years of signals intelligence. But she's still a soldier, still trained, still qualified, expert with this weapon. She opens fire, not fully automatic spray and pray. Controlled 3-round bursts, semi-automatic precision. each burst aimed at an enemy position, not trying to kill, necessarily, but trying to make them take cover, trying to break their momentum, trying to buy precious seconds. The enemy fighters dive for cover. Return fire, but shooting wild, surprised by sudden aggression from what they thought was a trapped target. Kira uses those seconds to drop back down, sling her rifle, grab Dalton under his good arm. Move, now! Together they lurch forward. Dalton pushing with his legs, Kira pulling with everything she has. They make it 20 meters before the enemy recovers and opens fire again. Rounds snap past them, impact rock, kick up dust. Close enough that Kira can hear the supersonic crack. She guides them to cover behind a larger boulder, both breathing hard. Dalton from pain and blood loss. Kira from adrenaline and effort. Dalton looks at her with eyes that are clearer now, shock giving way to tactical clarity. You can't carry me 8 miles. The math doesn't work. Kira is already stripping off his tactical vest. 30 pounds of armor and ammunition that he doesn't need anymore. She takes his remaining magazines, his water consolidates what matters. Leaves the rest. The math doesn't have to work. I just have to make it work anyway. She positions him on her back. Modified Ranger carry, his good arm over her shoulder, her arms hooked under his knees, his weight distributed across her shoulders and hips using skeletal structure instead of just muscle strength. It's brutally heavy, her knees buckle before she locks them. Her back immediately protests, sending urgent messages about load distribution and stress. But she leans forward, engages her core, finds the position where bone carries weight instead of tissue. Dalton's voice is weak, disbelieving. This is insane. Kira takes her first step, then another, each one agony, each one possible. Hold on tight, Cross. Stay conscious. If you pass out, we both die. She starts moving, away from the enemy, away from the kill zone, toward extraction, 8 miles distant, through terrain that will test every lesson she learned in Montana mountains 14 years ago. Behind them, enemy voices coordinate pursuit. Ahead, nothing but rock in altitude and distance. Inside her, a 14-year-old girl's voice reminding her that impossible is just a word. Pain is information, not orders. And Kira Brennan has never been good at following orders that don't make sense. She keeps walking. The first 100 meters are baptism by fire. Every step sends jolts of pain through Dalton's wounds, making him grunt and curse against Kira's shoulder. Her legs are already burning back, screaming protest at the unnatural weight distribution. But she keeps moving one step at a time, using terrain features to help. Descending slopes where gravity assists. Choosing routes that offer maximum cover from the enemy fighters who are somewhere behind them, coordinating their search. Kira's training kicks in, overriding the pain, signals flooding her nervous system. Field artillery taught her sustained physical punishment. Montana taught her mental fortitude. Now both lessons combine into forward momentum that defies the math, saying this is impossible. She adjusts Dalton's position, slightly redistributing weight. The modified Ranger carry keeps his mass centered over her hips and spine, but it requires constant micro-adjustments. Shift left when right shoulder burns too much. Lean forward more when lower back starts to spasm. It's dynamic load management, the kind of thing you can't teach in a classroom, only learn through experience. Dalton's consciousness is fading in and out. During one lucid moment, he tries to understand what's happening. Brennan, you're carrying, how is this? Kira's voice comes out steady despite the exertion. She's controlling her breathing, timing words with steps. It's called leverage cross and refusing to accept impossible. Behind them, she can hear enemy voices. They're speaking Pashto, coordinating their search. Her linguistic training means she understands every word. They know Americans are wounded. They know extraction will be attempted. They're spreading out to find the trail, to cut off escape routes, to finish what the ambush started. Kira chooses a route that takes them through a boulder field. Harder terrain, more obstacles, but also more concealment. The rocks break up, sight lines make tracking difficult. She moves through them like she's threading a needle, each step deliberate, using her smaller frame to advantage. 20 minutes into the carry, she has to stop. Her legs are shaking, breathing ragged, despite her attempts at control. She lowers Dalton as gently as possible behind a cluster of rocks that provide good cover, checks his wounds while catching her breath, still bleeding but not arterial. The shrapnel wounds are bad but survivable if she can get him to medical care. His face is pale with blood loss, but he's conscious. That's good. Unconscious patients are dead weight in ways that conscious ones aren't. His ability to hold on to help even minimally makes the difference between possible and impossible. Dalton's voice is weak but clear. Leave me. You can move faster alone. Get to the extraction point. Send help back. Kira pulls out her radio, checks if they have gained enough altitude to punch through the terrain interference. Static, still too deep in the mountains. She activates her emergency beacon instead. The signal will tell overhead assets they're alive and moving, but it won't give her two-way communication. And what happens when the enemy finds you in the next 10 minutes? I'll take some of them with me. I've still got my sidearm. 3 magazines, I can make them pay for it. Kira looks at him, sees the calculation in his eyes. The tactical logic that says one person moving fast has better odds than 2 moving slow. In pure mathematics, he's right. But mathematics doesn't account for the human variable. The part that says leaving teammates behind isn't something soldiers do when there's any other option. That's not how this ends. She can hear the enemy getting closer. Voices echoing off the rocks maybe 200 meters away now. They're searching methodically, knowing wounded Americans can't have gone far. Professional hunters who've been doing this for years. Kira makes a decision that's either tactically brilliant or suicidally stupid. She positions Dalton behind the best cover available, hands him his Sig Sauer P226 and 2 spare magazines. Stay quiet, stay hidden. I'm going to lead them away. Before he can protest, she's moving, deliberately making noise, creating a trail that leads away from his position. She moves 50 meters, then opens fire on the enemy positions with controlled bursts that announce her location while forcing them to take cover. The enemy takes the bait. She can hear the shift in their voices, the excitement of contact, the coordination as they pivot to pursue this new threat. They're converging on her position, weapons ready, thinking they've found their target. Kira uses the terrain expertly. She appears just long enough to draw them further away, then disappears into the rocks. She's smaller, faster in this tight terrain, and she knows exactly where she's going while they're searching blind. It's a deadly game of cat and mouse, and she's outnumbered at least 4-1, but she has advantages they don't. She leads them 300 meters away from Dalton's position, then goes to ground in a crevice between rocks. Controls her breathing, makes herself small. The enemy fighters pass within 10 meters, voices frustrated that they've lost her trail. She can smell their cigarette smoke, hear their footsteps on loose shale, feel the vibration through rock as they search. They're speaking rapidly in Pashto. One voice is different from the others, giving orders with authority. Former Afghan National Army, she realizes. Someone who knows U.S. tactics, who's fought Americans before. That makes him dangerous in ways the others aren't. The commander is analyzing the situation. Americans will head for ridge extraction point. Standard procedure. We don't chase them through rocks. We get ahead of them, cut them off where they have to cross open ground. Kira's blood runs cold. He's right. The direct route to the extraction point requires crossing an exposed ridgeline. If they get there first, set up an ambush, she and Dalton are finished. She needs to change routes, add distance, but avoid the trap. It means 2 more miles through mountains that are already testing her limits. But the alternative is walking into prepared positions with a wounded man on her back. She waits 10 more minutes, ensuring the enemy is committed to their new plan, then moves back to Dalton's position through a route they can't see. She approaches carefully in case they left someone watching, but his position is clear. Dalton is watching her return with an expression that's transformed from dismissive to something else entirely. You just drew off 6 fighters alone, then circled back through terrain they couldn't track. They're moving to cut off the main extraction route. We need to detour, adds 2 miles but keeps us alive. 2 more miles with me on your back. After you already carried me one. Kira checks her M4. Still has ammunition, but not unlimited. She'll need to be smart about any future engagements. Montana taught me about long carries cross. This isn't my first time moving heavy loads through mountains. It's just the first time the load can bleed out if I'm not fast enough. She helps him back into the modified Ranger carry position. The weight settling across her shoulders feels heavier. Now her muscles already fatigued, but she leans forward and starts moving. Her body is protesting, but protest is just information. The order to keep moving comes from her mind, and her mind doesn't negotiate with muscle fatigue. The next hour is a blur of sustained agony. Kira carries Dalton through terrain that would be challenging without any load. She falls once, managing to protect him from the impact by taking the fall on her hip and shoulder. The bruises will be spectacular, but nothing breaks. She gets back up and keeps moving. Her legs are beyond burning now. They're locked in a state of sustained effort that feels like running on broken glass. Each step is individually painful, but she's learned to separate pain sensation from forward movement. The pain exists, the movement continues. They're related but not causally connected. Dalton drifts in and out of consciousness. During one lucid period, he asked the question that's been bothering him. Why you don't owe me anything? I haven't exactly been welcoming. 3 days of treating you like you didn't belong, and now you're destroying yourself to save me. Why? Kira adjusts her grip, using a brief downhill slope to rest her legs slightly, while gravity does some of the work. Her voice comes out steady despite the exertion. You think I'm doing this for you. I'm doing it because leaving someone to die isn't something I can live with. Your opinion of me doesn't change that equation. You could have been the nicest person I ever met, or the worst. Doesn't matter. You're wounded. You need help. I can provide it. That's all the math that matters. Dalton is quiet for a long moment. When he speaks again, his voice is different. The arrogance is gone, replaced by something that might be humility. Still, most people would have left me. Made the tactical calculation that one moving fast beats two moving slow. Would have been the right call, probably. Then most people aren't very good at this job. Being a soldier isn't just about tactical calculations. It's about refusing to accept outcomes you can't live with. I can't live with leaving you behind when there's any chance of getting you out. They cross a stream. The water is knee-deep, shocking cold from snowmelt higher up the mountain. Kira wades through, using the cold to cool her overheated muscles. The water temperature that would be uncomfortable normally feels like relief against legs that are burning from sustained effort. She also knows the water will mask their trail, make tracking harder for the enemy commander who's trying to predict their route. On the far side of the stream is a slope that seems impossible. Nearly vertical, loose rock, no clear path. Kira looks at it and does the calculation. Going around adds a mile. Going up adds altitude, but saves distance. With Dalton on her back, altitude is expensive, but so is distance. She chooses up. Each step requires finding something to pull against. Rock edges, exposed roots, sheer determination manifested as forward progress. Her legs are shaking back, screaming shoulders rubbed raw where Dalton's weight presses down. Blood from his wounds is mixing with her sweat, creating a slick coating that makes grip harder. Halfway up the slope, she has to stop. Can't move another step without rest. She braces against a rock, keeping Dalton's weight supported while her legs tremble. The muscles are so fatigued they're misfiring, creating involuntary tremors that she can't control. Dalton feels it. You need to rest longer than this. We rest longer, we die here. Enemy is mobile, we need distance. You're human, Brennan, not a machine. Your body has limits. Kira takes 3 deep breaths, forces her legs to respond to commands from her brain. Limits are negotiable. I learned that at 14 carrying elk through Montana. Today I'm negotiating new limits. She starts moving again. 5 more steps, then 5 more. Building momentum in small increments until she reaches the top of the slope. When she crests the ridge, she collapses for 30 seconds. Just lies there, Dalton still on her back, both of them breathing hard. Her vision is starting to narrow at the edges, tunnel vision from sustained exertion and inadequate oxygen at this altitude. But 30 seconds is all she allows. Then she's up and moving again, because stopping for longer means muscles will lock up completely, means losing the rhythm that's keeping her functional. Hour 2 passes, then hour 3. Time becomes meaningless, reduced to the immediate present of each step. Not thinking about the miles remaining, just thinking about the next placement of her foot, then the next, building a chain of individual steps that somehow adds up to forward progress. Mile 4 is where something breaks. Kira feels it clearly. Something in her lower back gives way. Not a sudden catastrophic failure, but a tearing sensation as muscle or ligament fails under sustained load. The pain is sharp enough to make her gasp, nearly dropping Dalton. She stumbles, catches herself, adjusts her grip. The pain settles into a constant scream from her lower back, different from the fatigue pain everywhere else. This is damage pain, structural failure, the kind of injury that will require surgery and months of physical therapy if she survives long enough to get physical therapy. Dalton notices immediately. You're hurt. You're back. Kira is now limping, favoring her right side, trying to distribute load away from wherever the damage is. We're both hurt. Difference is I can still move. This is insane. You're doing permanent damage to yourself. Probably, but that's a problem for tomorrow. Today's problem is getting you to that extraction point. Her internal monologue is fighting a war between tactical reality and physical limitation. Her body is sending urgent messages that this needs to stop, that continuing will cause injury that might never fully heal. But her mind is remembering her father's voice in Montana mountains. Pain is information, not orders. The information says her back is damaged. The order says keep moving. The information doesn't get to overrule the order. They cover mile 5 with Kira moving like someone much older, each step careful, compensating for the injury. Mile 6 requires crossing exposed terrain that would be dangerous even without the back injury and the enemy pursuing. But there's no alternative. The detour to avoid the enemy ambush point has forced them onto this route. Halfway across the exposure, the first shots crack out. Kira's worst calculation has come true. The enemy commander was smart enough, experienced enough to predict alternative routes. 6 fighters are positioned on high ground, firing down at the exposed ridgeline. The professional way they're shooting says these aren't amateurs panicking. They're veterans, settling into firing positions, controlling their breathing, making aim shots. Kira runs. Not graceful running, not tactical movement, just desperate sprint toward cover with 200 pounds on her back and a damaged spine screaming protest. Rounds impact around her feet, kicking up rock fragments. She can hear the supersonic crack as bullets pass close. She makes it behind inadequate cover, drops behind rocks that aren't quite big enough, lowering Dalton as carefully as she can manage while taking fire. Her hands go immediately to her M4. Ammunition check. 15 rounds in current magazine. 2 full magazines remaining. Dalton's Sig Sauer with 3 magazines. Maybe 90 rounds total against 6 shooters on high ground with better positions. The math is bad. Kira switches her M4 to semi-automatic. Each shot needs to count now. She risks exposure to identified targets, picks the most exposed shooter centers. Her sights on his chest, controls her breathing, presses the trigger. The recoil is familiar, comfortable. She's shot expert with this weapon, every qualification since basic training. The fighter drops. Center mass hit immediate effect. The others take cover, firing discipline degrading as they process that the pinned American is shooting back effectively. Kira engages a second target. Shoulder hit not fatal, but takes him out of the fight. He's spinning, going down, no longer a threat. But they're advancing, professional fire and maneuver. One team shoots while another moves. They're going to overrun her position through sheer tactical competence. She can slow them, can make them pay for it, but she can't stop 6 shooters with 90 rounds and no support. Then she hears it, the sound that changes everything. Helicopter rotors, coming fast, low altitude, combat profile. The AH-64D Apache attack helicopter crests the adjacent ridge like divine intervention manifested in turbine engines and weapon systems. Its sensors have been tracking the firefight, FLAR thermal imaging, showing the entire tactical picture in ways that human eyes can't match. The pilot's voice crackles over Kira's radio. Ground element taking fire. This is Apache 2-1. We have eyes on your position. Can you mark hostile positions? Kira's hands are shaking now, adrenaline dump combining with exhaustion. She pulls out the PEQ-15 infrared laser designator attached to her M4, points it at the enemy positions. The beam is invisible to naked eyes but clear as daylight through the Apache's sensor suite. Hostiles marked. Danger close. We're 30 meters south of the beam. Copy ground element. We're hot. Keep your heads down. The M230 chain gun erupts. The sound isn't like anything else in warfare. 30mm high explosive rounds cycling at 625 rounds per minute, each impact creating a small explosion, showering the target area with fragmentation that turns cover into shrapnel. Kira presses herself over Dalton, shielding him with her body as the Apache works over the enemy positions. The noise is overwhelming, the physical sensation of high explosives detonating 50 meters away, creating pressure waves that she can feel through rock. The enemy positions simply cease to exist. Three fighters who weren't in direct line of fire break and run, abandoning the attack to save their own lives. The Apache's co-pilot tracks them with the chin-mounted gun. Precision bursts that end their retreat permanently. Professional work. No wasted ammunition. Just efficient application of overwhelming firepower. The silence after the gun stops is shocking. Kira's ears are ringing, but she can hear the Apache pilot's voice through the radio. Ground element Apache 2-1 area is clear. Will maintain orbit while you move to landing zone. Advise when ready for extraction coordination. Copy 2-1, thanks for the save. Kira tries to get up. Her legs don't respond properly. The adrenaline that was masking the full extent of her exhaustion is wearing off, leaving behind a body that's been pushed past normal human limits. Her back injury is screaming. Her legs are locked in cramps. Her shoulders are raw and bleeding where Dalton's weight has ground through uniform and skin. But the Apache overhead means the enemy won't advance. They know that moving into open ground now means dying under 30mm fire. The tactical situation has shifted. Not safe, but safer. The immediate crisis is over. Now Kira just has to move 2 more miles with catastrophic injuries and complete physical exhaustion. She forces herself to her feet, gets Dalton back into position through sheer will. Her body is in full rebellion now, every system sending urgent shutdown messages. But shutdown isn't an option. Not yet. Not with 2 miles remaining. That was close, Dalton mutters, more alert after the adrenaline of being shot at. Too close. We need to move while they're scattered. Kira starts walking. Calling it walking is generous. She's stumbling forward, each step requiring conscious effort to command legs that barely respond. Her back has moved past pain into numbness, which is somehow more concerning. Numbness suggests nerve involvement, suggests damage that might be permanent. Mile 7 is a nightmare. Kira falls twice, both times unable to protect Dalton properly. He takes impacts that make him cry out, reopening wounds that had started to clot. But she keeps getting back up, keeps moving. Because stopping means dying, and dying isn't acceptable while forward progress remains possible. Her vision is narrowing again. Tunnel vision from exhaustion and pain, and sheer stubborn refusal to acknowledge physical limits. She's operating in a space beyond normal human capacity, sustained by willpower and muscle memory, and a 14-year-old girl's lesson about carrying impossible loads through mountains. Dalton is trying to help, using his good leg to push slightly, trying to reduce the burden. It helps minimally, but every small bit matters when the margins are this thin. They reach a point where Kira simply cannot take another step. Her legs are done, completely finished. She tries to command them forward and gets nothing. No response. The muscles have exhausted every available energy store recruited, every possible fiber, and reached absolute mechanical failure. She sinks to her knees, lowering Dalton as gently as possible. Tries to stand back up. Can't. Her legs won't cooperate. Won't support even her own weight, much less his. I can't. It's the first time she's admitted defeat. The first time in 14 years of proving impossible things possible, that she's hit a wall she can't push through. Dalton looks at her, this 120-pound specialist who's carried him 7 miles through hell, who drew off enemy fighters alone, who took fire on an exposed ridge and shot back with precision, who's destroyed her body in sustained effort that defies every physical law that should have stopped her hours ago. He makes his own decision. Using his good arm, he pushes himself into a sitting position, then starts crawling, dragging his wounded side, leaving a blood trail on rock, but moving toward the extraction point under his own power. Not letting you kill yourself for me, Brennan. Kira watches him for 3 seconds, watches this 220-pound SEAL crawl like wounded infantry because she can't carry him anymore. Watches him tear his wounds open, probably causing damage that will complicate his recovery, all because she's failed. Then fury overcomes exhaustion. She didn't carry him 7 miles to watch him crawl the last quarter mile and bleed out 50 meters from rescue. She forces herself upright, legs screaming protest that escalates to agony. Back injury sending signals that would stop any rational person. But rational stopped mattering somewhere around mile 4. What the hell are you doing? Dalton looks back at her. What's it look like moving to landing zone since you're too stubborn to leave me? That's not how this works. I didn't carry you this far to watch you destroy yourself at the end. They're both yelling now, exhausted, injured, running on fumes and adrenaline and pure stubborn refusal to quit. Neither willing to let the other sacrifice themselves. Both committed to forward progress regardless of cost. The Apache pilot has been watching this entire drama unfold through high-resolution optics. He keys the radio to the incoming Black Hawk. Rescue 6 need immediate pickup at current location. Ground element is combat ineffective, but refusing to quit. Get that bird on the ground now. The Black Hawk pilot doesn't argue. He brings the helicopter in hot landing in a space that's barely adequate. The rotor wash blasts Kira and Dalton with hurricane-force wind and stinging debris. Crew chief and paramedic jump out running toward the two soldiers who are still arguing about who should crawl and who should carry. The paramedic is a grizzled veteran in his 50s who's pulled countless casualties out of bad situations. He takes one look at them and shakes his head. You two are the stubbornest damn people I've ever seen. Shut up and let us do our jobs. They load Dalton first. The paramedic works quickly, establishing IV access, applying fresh dressings to wounds, stabilizing him for flight. Dalton is still conscious, still trying to see where Kira is, still processing what just happened. The crew chief turns to Kira. Ma'am, let's get you aboard. Kira tries to walk to the helicopter under her own power, makes it 3 steps before her legs give out completely. She goes down hard, unable to catch herself, body in complete systemic failure. The crew chief catches her before she hits rock, lifts her easily despite her protests. Ma'am, with all due respect, you've done enough. Let someone else carry you for once. As the Black Hawk lifts off, Kira lies on the deck, watching the medics work on Dalton. She can feel the vibration of rotors through metal plating, can hear the Apache pilot reporting enemy movements to command, maintaining overwatch until they're clear of the area, can see mountains passing below through the open door. They made it, against odds that should have been impossible, through terrain that should have defeated them, past enemies that should have killed them. They made it because neither one would quit, because size doesn't matter when determination is absolute, because sometimes the smallest person carries the heaviest load and does it without complaining, without stopping, without accepting defeat. Dalton reaches out with his good hand, finds Kira's, squeezes once. She squeezes back, too exhausted for words, but the message is clear. They survived because neither one would quit. Because leaving teammates behind isn't acceptable when any alternative exists. Because sometimes impossible, it is just a word that needs to be proven wrong. The last thing Kira sees before exhaustion finally claims her is Dalton looking at her with an expression that contains no trace of the dismissiveness from 3 days ago. Just respect, gratitude, and the knowledge that he owes his life to someone he'd written off as too small to matter. Sometimes the strongest people come in the smallest packages, and sometimes it takes carrying someone 8 miles through hell to prove it. Kira wakes up in a field hospital, the kind of temporary medical facility that smells like antiseptic and desert dust. Her back is wrapped in bandages, tight enough that breathing takes conscious effort. Both legs are elevated compression wraps, controlling swelling. IV lines run into both arms, clear fluid dripping at measured intervals. The ceiling is canvas stretched over metal framework, and she can hear the constant background noise of generators and distant helicopter traffic. She tries to sit up. Her body vetoes the decision immediately. Pain floods through her lower back, sharp and specific in ways that suggest serious damage rather than simple fatigue. Her legs feel like they belong to someone else, heavy and unresponsive. A medical officer appears at her bedside. Captain's rank combat medical badge, the weathered look of someone who's spent multiple deployments patching soldiers back together. He checks her vitals with practiced efficiency. Specialist Brennan, welcome back. You've been out for 6 hours. How's the pain manageable? It's a lie, but soldiers don't complain about pain to doctors who are dealing with casualties worse off. The captain sees through it immediately. We can adjust your medication, but first you need to understand what you did to yourself out there. He pulls up a chair and his tone shifts from clinical to educational. Multiple torn muscles in your lower back, erector spinae group is shredded. Severe bilateral knee strain, both patellofemoral joints showing inflammation and possible cartilage damage. Stress fractures in both feet, metatarsals 2 through 4 bilaterally. And that's just the acute injuries we can document immediately. Kira processes this information, translates medical terminology into functional reality. Her back is torn up. Her knees are damaged. Her feet are fractured. The kind of injury profile that ends careers that require surgery and extensive rehabilitation. What's the recovery timeline? Physical therapy for months. Minimum 6 months before you're cleared for any kind of duty. Probably closer to a year before you're fully functional. And I need to be clear with you, specialist. This kind of damage often results in chronic issues. You'll likely have back pain for the rest of your life. The knees may develop arthritis prematurely. This is permanent impact from what you did out there. He pauses, making sure she's processing. The human body isn't designed to carry that kind of sustained load over that distance. What you accomplished was physiologically remarkable. It was also physiologically devastating. You traded your long-term health for immediate mission success. Kira looks at the ceiling, thinks about the math. Chronic pain versus Dalton Cross bleeding out on a mountain. Permanent injury versus leaving a teammate behind. The equation isn't complicated. How's Cross the SEAL? The captain's expression softens. Petty Officer Cross will make it. He lost significant blood, required transfusion and surgery to repair the shrapnel damage, but no permanent functional loss. He'll make full recovery and return to duty. He's been asking about you every hour since he woke up. Wanted to come see you, but we've got him restricted to bed for another day. Tell him I'm fine. I'll tell him you're alive, which is more accurate. The captain stands to leave, then turns back. For what it's worth, specialist, what you did out there is going to be studied. We're already getting inquiries from the medical community about the biomechanics, how someone your size moves someone his size that distance in those conditions. The case study will probably change how we teach casualty evacuation. After he leaves, Kira lies there processing. She accomplished the mission, got Dalton out alive, proved that impossible is negotiable when the stakes are high enough. And the cost is a body that will hurt for decades, that will remind her every morning of what she traded. She thinks about Montana, about her father teaching her that pain is information, not orders. Wonders if he knew when he taught that lesson how far she'd push the principle. Wonders if he'd be proud or concerned that she took his Ranger philosophy and applied it until her body broke. Probably both. 2 days later, they let Dalton visit. He walks in using crutches, his left side heavily bandaged, but his color is better. The pallor of blood loss has been replaced by the healthier tone of someone recovering properly. He sits carefully in the chair next to her bed, and for a long moment, neither of them speaks. The silence isn't uncomfortable. It's the silence of two people who went through something that doesn't translate easily into words. Combat creates a specific kind of understanding between people who survive it together. What they experienced on that mountain goes beyond normal combat bonding into something more fundamental. Finally, Dalton breaks the silence. His voice is different from 3 days ago. The arrogance is gone, replaced by something that might be humility mixed with respect. I owe you my life and an apology. Kira shifts slightly, trying to find a position where her back doesn't scream quite as loudly. You don't owe me anything. Apology accepted, though. No, I need to say this. What you did out there, I wouldn't have thought it was possible. The physics alone shouldn't work. Carrying someone nearly twice your weight 8 miles through mountains while injured and taking fire. I've served with SEALs for 8 years, trained with some of the hardest people in the military. I'm not sure I could have done what you did if positions were reversed. Kira looks at him directly. Physical strength isn't just about size, Cross. It's about leverage, technique, and refusing to quit when your body's screaming at you to stop. Montana taught me that. Field artillery reinforced it. This mission just proved it again. That what they teach in Signals Intelligence School. A slight smile crosses Kira's face despite the pain. No, learned that carrying elk quarters out of Montana backcountry when I was 14. My dad was Army Ranger, served Gulf War. He taught me the Ranger's motto doesn't just apply in combat. Rangers lead the way. Pain doesn't stop you. Quitting stops you. That determination transfers to anything that matters. Dalton processes this, recontextualizes everything he thought he knew about the small specialist he dismissed 3 days ago. Your file doesn't mention Montana, doesn't mention growing up hunting, just shows the MOS transfers, the deployments, the qualifications. Files show what's required. They don't show who someone is. You saw Pog with headphones. I didn't argue because arguing doesn't change minds. Only action changes minds. So I waited for action to matter, then did what needed doing. Dalton nods slowly. Then his expression shifts, becomes more serious. I need to tell you something. Need you to understand why I was the way I was. It's not an excuse, but it's context. He shifts his weight, grimacing as the movement pulls at his injuries. Ramadi 2006, I was new to the team, still proving myself. We had this kid attached to us, fresh from training as support personnel like you. Radio operator, he seemed solid in training, but when contact happened, he froze. Complete paralysis. Couldn't function. And because he froze, our communications went down at exactly the wrong moment. We got ambushed, lost 2 teammates because we couldn't coordinate our response effectively. His voice is tight, the memory clearly painful. I blamed him, blamed the command structure that attached untested support personnel to operator teams. Started projecting that onto anyone who wasn't operator qualified, anyone who came to us from support roles. It wasn't fair, wasn't logical, but loss makes you irrational sometimes. Kira listens without interrupting, understanding the psychological wound that created his behavior. You're nothing like that kid, Brennan. You're tougher than half the SEALs I've served with. What you did out there proves something I should have known from watching you those 3 days. Size doesn't determine capability. Will determines capability, and you've got will that most people can't comprehend. Toughness isn't about size cross, it's about not quitting. When quitting would be easier. When staying in the fight costs you everything. That's when you find out who's really tough. Dalton reaches into his pocket, pulls out a small object. The flash drive that was in his chest pocket during the carry. The classified intelligence that raised the stakes beyond just his life. You protected this along with me. The intel on here led to 3 successful operations that took down enemy networks. Because you got me out, this information got back to command. Missions succeeded. Lives were saved, not just mine. Dozens of people who will never know your name are alive because you refused to quit on that mountain. He places the drive on her bedside table. The team wants you in for a silver star. Chief Madsen is writing the citation personally. I'm co-signing it. The citation describes what you did in clinical language, but anyone reading it will understand. Entered kill zone alone under fire. Suppressed enemy combatants. Carried wounded teammate 8 miles through hostile territory while injured. Secured classified material. Textbook valor above and beyond the call of duty. Kira looks at the flash drive. Thinks about how many times she wanted to stop during that carry. How many moments she considered the math and thought maybe Dalton was right about leaving him behind. How close she came to accepting defeat. I was just doing my job. No, Dalton's voice is firm. Your job was to monitor radio frequencies at the OP. What you did was way beyond that. You made tactical decisions under fire. You executed a 1-person rescue operation in enemy territory. You carried a casualty under conditions that should have been impossible. That kind of courage, that kind of character, that's what medals are for. 3 months later, Fort Bragg. Kira stands in formation, wearing her dress uniform, back still aching despite months of physical therapy, knees still protesting every position change. The physical therapist was right about chronic issues. She wakes up every morning with pain that reminds her of what she traded on that mountain. Some mornings she needs 20 minutes of stretching just to walk normally. The prognosis says this is her new normal. Permanent impact from temporary action. But she's standing, walking, functioning. The doctor said 6 months minimum before she'd be cleared for any duty. She's made it in 4 through stubborn refusal to accept their timelines. The parade ground is full. Dress uniforms families the formal ceremony that the military uses to recognize extraordinary action. Kira's family flew in from Montana. Her father stands in the crowd wearing a suit that doesn't quite fit his ranger's frame, but his expression shows pride that doesn't need words. The SEAL team is in attendance, full dress blues ribbons and badges marking their years of service. Dalton stands at attention, no longer needing crutches, recovered enough to return to duty. Chief Madsen beside him, weathered face showing approval. The entire team that once dismissed her is now witnessing her recognition. The general approaches, Stars on his shoulders, career's worth of ribbons on his chest. He reads the citation aloud in the clinical military language, somehow makes the action more real. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of her life above and beyond the call of duty. Specialist Kira Brennan distinguished herself by acts of extraordinary heroism while serving as signals intelligence specialist attached to a special operations element conducting reconnaissance operations in Kunar Province, Afghanistan. When her team came under attack from a coordinated ambush involving an improvised explosive device and concentrated small arms fire, Specialist Brennan voluntarily left her position of relative safety to rescue a critically wounded team member who was isolated and under imminent threat of capture or death by enemy forces. The general continues detailing each action: the suppression fire that bought time, the modified carry technique over 8 miles of mountain terrain, the tactical decisions made under fire, the injuries sustained, the classified material protected, each sentence translating what happened into official language that will be preserved in military records. When he pins the silver star to her uniform, the weight is minimal, a piece of metal and ribbon that weighs ounces. But the meaning carries more weight than any physical load she moved on that mountain. Recognition that what she did mattered. That impossible became possible because she refused to accept defeat. Dalton applauds louder than anyone when the medal is presented. The SEAL team joins him, and there's respect in that applause that didn't exist 3 months ago. She's proven something they needed to see proven. That size is irrelevant when will is absolute. After the ceremony, Kira stands alone for a moment looking at the medal, processing what it represents. Her father approaches, and when he speaks, his voice carries the pride of a ranger who recognizes what his daughter accomplished. Your mother wanted me to tell you she's proud. I wanted to tell you I knew. When you were 14, carrying that elk out of the mountains, I knew you had something that can't be taught. The kind of internal strength that makes impossible things possible. You taught me that, Dad. Pain is information, not orders. I taught you the words. You proved the principle. What you did on that mountain went beyond anything I did in the Gulf. Beyond anything most soldiers ever do. You rewrote assumptions about what's possible. They embrace, and Kira feels the chronic pain in her back flare up from the movement. Permanent reminder of temporary action. She doesn't regret it, would make the same choice again if the situation required it. A colonel approaches, unfamiliar face, 55 years old, multiple combat tabs on his uniform, indicating extensive special operations experience. He introduces himself as the commander of a specialized training program. His voice carries the authority of someone who's seen enough to know what matters. Specialist Brennan, I've been following your case with considerable interest. The determination you displayed, the physical capability, despite size differential, the tactical thinking under extreme pressure, those are exactly the qualities we look for in our program. Kira meets his eyes. What kind of program, sir? The kind that doesn't care about your size, your gender, or what anyone assumes about your capabilities. We only care about results. You've proven you can deliver results when everything is on the line. When the mission seems impossible and most people would quit, you found a way forward. He hands her a card. No name, no organization, just a phone number. If you're interested in continuing to prove what's possible when people underestimate, you call that number when you're medically cleared. We'll be waiting. After he walks away, Kira looks at the card, thinks about what it represents. Another test, another opportunity to prove impossible things possible. Her back hurts, her knees hurt. Her feet still have residual pain from the stress fractures. But pain is information, not orders. She pockets the card. 6 months later, Kira runs through an obstacle course designed to break candidates who don't have the right combination of strength endurance and pure, stubborn refusal to quit. The course is part of a selection process that she can't discuss for a program that doesn't officially exist, leading to opportunities that will never appear in her service record. She's one of 3 women in a class of 40 candidates, the only one under 5'6", surrounded by men who have 50 pounds and 6 inches on her. The same dynamic she's faced her entire military career. The same assumptions about size determining capability. The rope climb with 60-pound pack should favor the bigger candidates. More upper body strength, longer reach, physical advantages that math says matter. But Kira learned something on a Montana mountain at 14, reinforced it carrying artillery rounds in Iraq, proved it carrying Dalton through Afghanistan. Technique matters more than size. Leverage matters more than strength. Will matters more than physical advantages. She attacks the rope using efficient technique. Legs doing most of the work, core engaged arms just stabilizing. The 60-pound pack is heavy, but she's carried heavier. 8 miles with 220 pounds on her back taught her things about load management that these candidates haven't learned yet. She finishes third overall, beats candidates who have significant physical advantages. The instructors are watching, making notes, evaluating not just physical performance, but mental approach. One instructor makes a notation in his evaluation book. Size doesn't determine capability. Will determines capability. Brennan has will in surplus. That evening, Kira writes a letter to Dalton. Brief update letting him know she's doing well, thanking him for the recommendation that led to this opportunity. She doesn't mention the specifics about the program because the specifics are classified. Just lets him know she's still proving what's possible. His response arrives 2 weeks later. Short message that makes her smile despite the pain from that day's training evolution. I tell everyone the story of the 120-pound specialist who carried a 220-pound SEAL 8 miles through enemy mountains. Half of them don't believe me. They say the physics don't work, that it's impossible, that I must be exaggerating. But I was there. I know what you're capable of. Whatever you're doing now, I know you're proving them wrong again. Keep carrying the weight, Brennan. Some of us know exactly how strong you are. Years pass. The story becomes legend within special operations communities. New candidates hear it during selection courses when they're ready to quit. When their bodies are screaming and their minds are looking for any excuse to stop, instructors tell them about Kira Brennan, about how someone half the size of most operators carried a full-grown SEAL 8 miles through hell because quitting wasn't an option she was willing to accept, about how size became irrelevant when will became absolute, about how impossible is just a word that needs to be proven wrong. Medical researchers study her case trying to understand the biomechanics. How does someone that small generate the sustained force necessary to move that much weight over that distance? The answer isn't in muscle fiber composition or skeletal structure. It's in technique, leverage, efficient use of terrain and momentum, and most importantly, an absolute refusal to acknowledge physical limitations when lives are at stake. Physical therapy programs incorporate her load-bearing methods into training curricula. The modified Ranger carries she used become standard instruction for moving casualties when traditional carries aren't feasible. Her case proves that proper technique can overcome massive disparities in size and strength. That understanding leverage matters more than possessing raw power. But the real lesson, the one that matters most to the operators who hear her story, isn't about technique or biomechanics. It's about character. About the reality that when everything is on the line, when someone's life depends on refusing to quit, size becomes irrelevant. What matters is the content of your will, the depth of your determination, the unwillingness to accept defeat. Chief Madsen, now retired, gives guest lectures at West Point. He's 54 years old, looking back on 28 years of service that included Desert Storm, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. Enough combat experience to understand what courage looks like in its various forms. When he talks to cadets about leadership under pressure, he tells them about Kira Brennan. I've seen a lot of courage in my career. Men charging machine gun positions, pilots landing damaged aircraft to save crews, medics working under fire to save wounded. All of it extraordinary. But what Specialist Brennan did on that mountain reminded me of something fundamental. The content of your character matters more than the size of your frame. He pauses, making sure the cadets are processing. She was 5 foot 420 pounds. The SEAL she carried was 6'3", 220 pounds. For 8 miles through mountains at 10,000 feet elevation while injured and pursued by enemy forces. The math said impossible. Physics said it couldn't be done. Her body was sending messages that it couldn't continue. And she did it anyway, because leaving a teammate behind wasn't something she could live with. Because pain is information, not orders. Because sometimes the warriors who look least capable prove most capable when everything's on the line. Size stopped mattering the moment she decided his life was worth more than her comfort. The cadets listen with the attention that comes from understanding they're hearing something important. something that will matter when they face their own moments of impossible odds and calculated surrender. Somewhere in a classified location, Kira leads a team through training evolution that tests limits most people don't know they have. She's older now, carries the chronic pain from that Afghanistan mountain in her back and knees. Some mornings require extra stretching, extra preparation, accepting that her body remembers what she traded for mission success. But she's still operational, still proving what's possible, still teaching younger operators that size is irrelevant when will is absolute. She doesn't talk much about Afghanistan, doesn't need to. The people who need to know the story already know it. The ones who don't know wouldn't understand anyway. Dalton, still with his SEAL team, tells the story to a new guy who's doubting whether the female intelligence specialist attached to their unit belongs on operations. The new guy listens with the skepticism of someone who thinks he knows how things work. That's impossible. The physics don't support it. She couldn't have carried him that far. Dalton looks at him with the expression of someone who's learned important lessons through experience. That's what I thought too. I spent 3 days dismissing her as too small to matter. Then she carried me 8 miles through enemy territory while her back was tearing apart and her legs were failing, and every physical law said she couldn't take another step. The physics said impossible. She proved physics negotiable. And I'm alive because she refused to accept math over mission. So when you look at that specialist and start calculating whether she belongs, remember that capability isn't about size. It's about will. And you don't know what someone's will can accomplish until the mission requires impossible things. The new guy is quiet, processing this information, recalculating his assumptions. Somewhere in Montana, a 14-year-old girl's learning to hunt elk with her father, learning to carry heavy loads through mountain terrain, learning that pain is information, not orders, learning lessons that might matter decades later when impossible situations require impossible actions. She doesn't know it yet, but she's being prepared for something that hasn't happened yet. Being taught principles that will matter when the stakes are life and death. Being shown that the limits she thinks she has aren't real. That capability extends beyond what size and strength suggest. That will determine what's possible more than any physical measurement. The story continues, not because it ended, but because it became something larger than one mission in Afghanistan. It became proof. Evidence that impossible is negotiable. That size is irrelevant when determination is absolute. That leaving someone behind isn't acceptable when any alternative exists. Kira Brennan proved that on a mountain in Afghanistan in 2012, carrying 220 pounds of wounded SEAL through 8 miles of enemy territory, destroying her body in the process, trading her long-term health for immediate mission success, making a choice that most people would consider irrational. And in doing so, she rewrote the assumptions about what's possible, about who gets to be tough, about whether size matters when will is infinite, about what happens when someone small enough to be dismissed decides they're strong enough to matter. Pain is information, not orders. The body tells you what's happening. The mind decides what to do about it. Kira decided that Dalton Cross was going to survive that mountain. The information her body provided about impossibility and injury and failure didn't change that decision. She just carried the weight, one step at a time, through terrain that should have stopped her, past injuries that should have defeated her, beyond limits that should have been absolute, until impossible became historical fact, until physics bent to will, until a 120-pound specialist proved that strength isn't measured in pounds and inches. It's measured in refusal to quit when quitting makes sense, in commitment to teammates that overrides self-preservation, in willingness to trade everything for mission success. That's the story. That's the legacy. That's what gets told to new operators when they're ready to quit during selection, when the pain is overwhelming and the mission seems impossible and surrender looks rational. Remember Kira Brennan. Remember that impossible is just a word. Remember that size doesn't matter when will is absolute. And keep moving forward, one step at a time, until impossible becomes accomplished, until the mission succeeds, until you prove what everyone said couldn't be done. Because that's what warriors do. Not the biggest warriors, not the strongest warriors, but the ones who refuse to quit when quitting would be easier, the ones who carry the weight.